나이지만 놀 땐 노는 선어해 내가 되면 완전 미
This was my very first Luigi's Mansion game. I don't really know why I hadn't played the previous entries. I guess I just didn't care enough about the premise. I wasn't actively avoiding them, nor did I have any particular dislike for them. I just didn't know what the games actually were and didn't care enough about what I had a vague idea of to look into it further. And that was clearly a mistake because Luigi's Mansion 3 is delightful. So what is Luigi's Mansion then? A puzzle game? A dungeon crawler? A puzzle platformer? I guess it could easily be any of these things, but the puzzle solving really is front and center, and it gets really, really creative. The game begins with Mario and the gang heading to a hotel for a much needed vacation, but it isn't long before you find yourself in control of Luigi in the middle of the night, and you can feel that something isn't quite right. It turns out you've been lured to the hotel by all manner of boos and ghosts, and everybody else has been trapped inside paintings. Luckily you get your hands on the Poltergust, a particularly effective ghost hunting weapon, and with the help of Dr. Egad you set off exploring the hotel to track down and save your friends. The Poltergust and its various functions and abilities form the basis of gameplay and the puzzle solving itself. It blows, it sucks, and it can make you burst.
That's your mama.
It can also release a huge flash of light to stun ghosts or activate switches, shine a special beam that can reveal or restore objects to their original form, shoot plunges which can be used in a variety of ways, and most interestingly, it can summon a Luigi body double made of goo named, you guessed it, Gooigi. You'll need to employ all of these mechanics in increasingly more complex ways to move through each floor of the hotel, which all have a specific theme. This is why you could make the argument that it's somewhat of a dungeon crawler, because some of the floor settings are obviously not hotel floors. There's a giant booby trap filled pyramid level, a pirate ship level, and an entire movie studio, alongside more common hotel settings like luxury suites and a gym and pool floor. You will be moving through the hotel floor by floor because somebody has stolen all of the elevator buttons, and those somebodies turn out to be ghosts. Each floor has a puzzle solving and exploration section before ending in a boss fight with a unique, powerful ghost that perfectly embodies the theme of the floor. Beating the boss will award you with the elevator button they stole, allowing you to continue your journey through the hotel. It sounds a lot more linear than it actually feels to play, and that's because each floor is chock full of optional collectibles and secrets. There are 6 hidden gems and a boo on each floor. Boos are somewhat like mini bosses, while the gems will usually require some of the most creative uses of the game's mechanics to find. Collecting gems actually became my favorite part of the game because finding them really required you to think outside the box. The way the mechanics are introduced to you and the way they are most often used in the game universe aren't the only ways to use them. The puzzle solving, particularly when searching for gems, blends the in-game logic with our knowledge of the real world. We know by playing the game that we can activate blinking green switches by flashing the Poltergust, but we're never told that you can use your suction power to carry a bucket of water into a sauna and pour water onto the coals, creating steam, which reveals some cashed up golden ghosts. Sometimes a floor will introduce new ways to use the Poltergust mechanics which form part of the theme of the level. This can be a good thing and a bad thing. It's good because it keeps the puzzle solving fresh and makes each floor feel unique, but you could find yourself hitting a bit of a wall should you not enjoy the mechanic a certain floor is focusing on. I really didn't like B2, which was like a service and maintenance area. Much of the level involves you floating through sewers on an inflatable ring, using your Poltergust to propel you along while controlling Luigi on the level above, who opens gates and clears obstacles for you. Thankfully though, I don't think any floor overstays its welcome. They are quite well paced, so even though I wasn't exactly enjoying the game throughout B2, it didn't last so long that it severely impacted my enjoyment of the game as a whole. I could honestly spend the next 20 hours explaining every way each and every mechanic is used, which is as long as it took me to finish the game with all gems collected, but suffice it to say that the gameplay is very fun, the puzzle solving is very creative, and the game has excellent pacing in both structure and in the way it introduces mechanics to the player. Bosses are also just as unique and creative as each level is, but this is where my first minor gripe with the game comes in. It didn't happen often, but there were a few times I got frustrated with the game. 2 or 3 of the boss fights had solutions that just did not seem logical to me. The game is all about using the Poltergust in creative ways, but more than once during a boss I'd try everything I thought was logical, then everything I thought was illogical, and then the final Hail Mary long shots, only to find out that I actually needed to not do anything. The basics of combat require you to flash the ghost to make it vulnerable so you can suck it up with the Poltergust and slam it around the room to deal damage, but many enemies will have ways to stymie this approach. They might be wearing sunglasses or holding a shield, meaning you'll need to suck the sunglasses off or fire a plunger at the shield to play tug of war with it before you can flash them vulnerable. These things are logical, but on more than one occasion with a boss employing a similar tactic, the solution was to literally do nothing except dodge their attack. They'd get their weapon stuck or lodged somewhere, allowing you to flash them vulnerable, and all of your efforts to do the logical thing like firing plungers were actually preventing you from progressing the fight, because they'd interrupt the boss's attack that is needed for him to get stuck. In a game where there are about 1,000 unique ways to utilize the physics and mechanics, scarcely ever does the thought, maybe I just shouldn't do anything, pop into your head. My only advice here is if you think you've tried everything, try doing nothing. The only other minor gripe I have is with the way the game grades you upon finishing the story, and let me be clear, this is a very minor gripe because the grade basically means nothing. After the end credits, you'll be given a grade from A to C. There is presumably also an S and a D rank, but details on that are sketchy so far. Anyway, the grade is 100% entirely based on how many coins you have on your person when you defeat the final boss. They don't even so much as hint that this is the case anytime throughout the game, and worse yet, there is a shop where you can spend coins, and they do not count towards your grade. The items are definitely not necessary, but I assumed I was supposed to be spending coins, so I kept buying stuff. This meant that at the end, even though I'd collected all the gems and about half of the booze, I was slapped with a C rank. Maybe this is something veterans of the series would have known, but it was very confusing for me as a first timer. As I said though, this doesn't really matter because the grade doesn't really matter. Back to the good stuff, and the final thing I want to talk about, we have the story or narrative or whatever you want to call it. I keep wanting to say writing, but so much of the game is visual. There is writing, of course, and there is some very limited voice acting, which is mainly intelligible gibberish or catchphrases, but these aren't the highlights. And neither is the overarching narrative, which is a pretty straightforward affair. What makes this part of the game so great is the animation and visual storytelling. Sometimes it can feel like a throwback to silent comedies or slapstick humor, and the game is very funny at times. The quality of the animation is so good though that you can learn almost everything you need to know about a character like one of the bosses after seeing them on screen for as little as a minute. Don't expect some epic story that keeps you on the edge of your seat, but do expect a masterclass in visual storytelling. And that's where I'll wrap it up. I enjoyed Luigi's Mansion 3 a hell of a lot more than I thought I would, and even though my playthrough was only 20 hours, I could easily see myself giving it another run, this time shooting for that elusive S rank. Not to mention that there are 2 multiplayer modes I didn't even touch. There is more than enough on offer here to give it my recommendation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.
Thanks for